Welcome to the Dairy News and Views podcast, a production of the Iowa State University Extension and Outreach Dairy Team. Our podcast covers current educational, research, and industry tools available for your operation to manage healthy cows and calves while producing the highest quality dairy products. Thanks for joining us today on Dairy News and Views from the ISU Dairy Team. I'm Jen Bentley, Northeast Iowa Dairy Field Specialist, and I'm here today with my dairy colleague, Fred Hall, Northwest Iowa Dairy Field Specialist, as we discuss today's topic of all things dairy in Iowa, from the economic impact of a cow that has on our dairy industry to the open houses that are going on to celebrate June Dairy Month. So welcome back to the podcast, Fred.
June is my favorite time. Have these open houses and eat ice cream and drink chocolate milk. Life's really good right now, Jen.
Right? Makes you want to do that every month, right?
Exactly.
Well, today we're pleased to have on our podcast Mitch Schulte, our Executive Director of the Iowa State Dairy Association, and the Northeast Iowa Dairy and Agricultural Foundation Coordinator, Mariah Busta. They play an important role in Iowa's dairy industry, providing education at levels of the dairy supply chain, supporting Iowa's dairy industry, the dairy producers, educating consumers, and working with our processors. ISDA also serves as a legislative voice on issues related to the dairy industry and really provides a cohesive message. So welcome to our podcast, Mitch and Mariah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here.
Well, it's really great to work with both of you out in the dairy industry as we support our dairy producers and help educate our consumers about the dairy industry. So maybe to start off, if you could each give us more background on your role in your organization and what it does for our dairy industry.
Yeah, so I guess I can kick it off. Mitch Schulte again, and my title, I am the Executive Director of the Iowa State Dairy Association, and I actually have a unique role where I have a joint role. I work for Checkoff as well as our Farmer Relations Manager here in Iowa. So my role on the Midwest Dairy side is to go out and meet with dairy farmers, help them understand where their checkoff dollars are being utilized and how we're helping to grow the markets for them and that consumer trust, and then help those farmers get engaged in different opportunities to meet with consumers and help share their story. On the ISDA side, that's our political voice for our dairy farmers here in the state, where we're looking at laws and regulations that are affecting our dairy farmers' freedom to operate, and we're continuing to look into different avenues on ways to expand our industry and make Iowa a better place to dairy.
Mitch, we threw out a verbiage that some of our consumers may not understand. We use the phrase dairy checkoff. What do you mean by that?
The way that the dairy industry helps to promote their dairy products is there's a federally mandated checkoff. So for every 100 pounds of milk that a dairy cow produces or a farmer produces, we get 15 cents from the sale of that milk. We use those dollars or that 15 cents to help promote dairy products on behalf of the dairy industry. So we don't promote particular brands, but we do work with different companies to promote milk, cheese, butter, and all the delicious dairy products our farmers make.
And Mariah, you play an important role with the Northeast Iowa Dairy Foundation. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm the coordinator at the Northeast Iowa Dairy and Agriculture Foundation near Calmer. So the foundation was originally known as the Northeast Iowa Community-Based Dairy Foundation, and it was developed in 2000 with the purpose to retain young people in rural areas while bolstering the economic impact of dairy farms in Northeast Iowa. So in 2020, members of the organization actually voted to change the name to diversify and include broader agriculture into the mission. The Dairy and Agriculture Foundation today operates Iowa's Dairy Center, which is a 220 cow dairy focused on providing demonstration on modern agriculture practices, as well as we operate the Beef Education Center, where we raise market steers and cow-calf pairs, and we farm about 250 acres implementing conservation projects throughout the farm. So it's our mission as the foundation to provide progressive outreach for a huge audience, which includes youth, students, farmers, industry, and consumers, to strengthen and support a strong agriculture community. And what a better month to dial in our mission than June Dairy Month.
Just recently, we've been working with the Iowa State Dairy Association to put a publication together that really showcases the latest stats of Iowa's dairy industry. We like to do this every few years to give those numbers to our consumers, to our producers who are working with, other people that maybe don't know so much about the dairy industry. So Mitch, can you tell us where Iowa ranks right now in our cow numbers, milk production, and some of those facts?
Yeah, so right now here in the state of Iowa, we have about 883 grade A dairies. Out on those dairy farms, we have approximately 220,000 milking cows, which is a very strong number, and we've stayed very close to that number for the last several years. Actually, here in Iowa, the dairy industry is the 5th largest agriculture sector in our state, and right now we rank 12th in the nation for total milk production. Iowa accounts for about 2.5% of the total milk produced here in the United States. So that's a fantastic number, and we continue to look at ways that we can continue to grow our industry here in the state and expand on the number of cows and the number of dairy farms, so we can keep seeing that number. Hopefully, at some point, we'll drop down to 11th in the nation in milk production.
Fred, as we talk about the growth of the dairy industry in Iowa, maybe you've seen more of the growth in cow numbers over the last couple of years in Northwest Iowa. What do you think makes Iowa such a good place to milk cows?
Well, I'm going to go backwards just a little bit here, Jen, and remind folks listening that while we're focused on the dairy cows mostly today, Iowa is also the number 3 state for dairy goats with over 200 licensed dairy goat milk providers. And they're an important part of our industry as far as putting economic inventory into the state. So just give a little shout out to folks who are milking dairy goat. When we look at the area here in Northwest Iowa, we really have 3 things that are attractive in bringing producers into the area, as well as allowing current producers to expand. And 2 that come together nicely are availability of water and availability of feed. Grow a lot of corn and corn silage. We have access to aquifers and surface water, so that's really good. And then the third thing is we have substantive growth in our processors. So we can take it to ice cream there in Lamar's, to cheese in Sibley and Hull, or we can just go across the state line and go to some of the plants on the area in Minnesota and South Dakota.
And Fred, I would just also comment, Mitch and Mariah and Fred and I were all on the call here, and, we all had family farm backgrounds, and I would say Iowa is a great place to raise a family. And being out on a dairy farm, I would say it's just a great way to raise your kids. Yes, it's hard work sometimes, but just being out there with your family sure makes a difference working on those farms.
And to kind of reiterate something Mitch had mentioned, the vast majority of farms, and especially dairy farms, are family owned. Mitch was up to our open house up to Prairie Creek, which is part of Plymouth Dairy, all owned by one family, and milk 7,000 cows. So, family is an important part of the dairy industry in Iowa.
Well, Mitch, since we're talking about family farms, and those family farms bring a lot of economic value to their communities because they're there, that means businesses are operating in town, schools are open. Can you tell us a little bit about the economic value of one cow to our economy and why that's important to us?
Absolutely. Well, here in the state of Iowa, we have diversity of sizes of dairies and types of dairies. We have every type of milking system that you can virtually think of here in the state. And we have dairy herds that range from just a handful of cows, or maybe even one cow out on a farm, all the way up to 10,000. So each one of those cows plays a very important role in our economic contribution here in the state. And every single cow here in the state has an economic value of $25,495. And that's important to remember that number, because as you drive past a dairy farm that's near a local community, that's the money that they're putting back into those local communities and investing in employees, investing in equipment, even stopping at your local gas station. They're putting money back into the local economy, because that dairy farm is in the area. And it's important to know that for every 14 cows, one job is created. And as we look at those jobs, and we know that there is a little bit of a labor shortage right now, but as people are looking for work, the dairy industry is a great place to go to work. Just like you said, Jen, it's a great way to raise a family, and it's a great way to be a part of a business. Most of our dairy farmers treat their employees like their family. So we know that our dairy farmers are not only putting money back into the economy, but they're also helping some of those people find work and get to a better lifestyle working out in agriculture.
Mitch, what trends are we seeing in consumption of dairy products and other new products out there that we ought to be thinking about?
Well, we are seeing a large increase of home cooking through the pandemic and post-pandemic, which has resulted in an increased home use of butter and cheese. We all love our butter, we love cheese, and now that a lot of our consumers are cooking at home more, they've realized adding that butter and that cheese adds the flavor to their meal. So we're seeing a tremendous increase in our butter and cheese, and we expect that to stay strong through the coming years. While Checkoff is brand agnostic, so we can't promote a particular brand, we do promote our categories, so milk, cheese, butter, etc. And we do this through working with retailers and C-stores to promote dairy across all categories. We look at new campaigns that we can launch with our partners, and these campaigns are geared to not only help the consumer understand the product better, but to ensure that we're moving more dairy products on behalf of our dairy farmers. Once again, especially as June's coming around, we know that ice cream's great, cheese is great, and butter is great. So the more of that we can incorporate, not only is it a healthy way to have it as part of your diet, it's also something that cost-wise is relatively cheap when it comes to the benefits that it provides to you. So we're seeing, like I said, great increases in cheese and butter, and I hope we continue to see that. Our dairy farmers and our dairy companies have been so innovative through COVID that I expect here in the next couple of years to see multiple new products that reach out and meet those consumers' demands, conquering the sustainable efforts and also the taste. Our consumers continue to demand different food, palatable foods. So we continue to shift the way that we create our dairy products to meet those consumer demands.
You know, as we think about consumption, we focus about what we're eating and our neighbors, but we're also a provider of dairy products to the world. And American dairyman now has seen the highest exports basically in history. So that's important as we think about how we reduce inventories. But more than that, it helps keep our product as inexpensive as it can be for the consumer consuming dairy protein.
Absolutely. Exports have played a critical role in the history of dairy, of allowing us to expand and keep those products cheap, just like you said. So exports are looking good right now, and hopefully as more and more consumers not here in the United States, countries abroad get to enjoy our dairy products and our high quality of standards that we hold, hopefully we continue to see those exports increase.
Great comments, Fred and Mitch, and talking about dairy products. Just coming into the summer, my kids are home and just trying to keep the fridge stocked with cheese sticks and yogurt and some of those quick, easy things to grab that are still healthy for those kids. And dairy products always seem to come to mind when we think about some of those summer treats. So speaking of dairy products, Mariah, I also get some questions about how much milk it takes to make dairy products. Do you have some of those numbers? So like how many pounds of milk for making a pound of cheese or yogurt, some of those products?
Yeah, absolutely. And with our tourism efforts here at Iowa's Dairy Center, always make sure to make the connection with consumers so they understand the process of milk from farm to table. So for about 1 pound of plain yogurt, it takes 1 pound of whole milk. It takes just over 6 pounds of milk to make 1 pound of cottage cheese. It takes 10 pounds of milk for 1 pound of cheese. For a gallon of ice cream, it'll take 12 pounds of milk. And then for butter, 1 pound of butter, it'll take 21.2 pounds of milk.
And you also have your breakfast on the farm coming up. So I'm sure there's not going to be a shortage of dairy products being served there. So can you tell us a little bit more about that upcoming breakfast on the farm?
Yeah, so our breakfast on the farm, we're excited to host it again this year after having to cancel in 2020. So this year is going to be back and better than ever. So we're going to be hosting it on Saturday, June 26th from 8:30 to noon. And we will be serving tons of dairy products. So the breakfast will include Dad's Belgian waffles with whipped cream and butter, of course, to top it. We'll have sausage and then milk, cheese, yogurt, and ice cream, everything to support our local dairy economy. We'll have lots of activities going on at Breakfast on the Farm. Some of my favorite include the guided tram tours of the farm. And so what's neat about these tram tours is they're actually led by dairy farmer and beef farmer volunteers that'll jump on the tram and show everybody around the farm. So it's a really, really great opportunity for consumers to not only see the farm, but get to talk to a real local dairy farmer or beef farmer and get those questions answered and make that connection. People will also be able to hand milk a cow. So that's always been a hit. People always love getting to experience milking a cow. We'll have a petting zoo with calves and goats and sheep. And so that'll be really fun. We'll have some other activities like story time with the dairy princess and some inflatables and corn pools and lots of educational activities. So our event will follow current CDC guidelines. So we're being mindful of safety precautions, but we are just absolutely excited to host the event again. And so again, that is Saturday, June 26th. From 8:30 to noon here at Iowa's Dairy Center, just south of Kelmer. So I hope to see everybody there.
You know, Mitch, we reference the open house here in Northwest Iowa, sponsored by Western Iowa Dairy Alliance, was held on a family farm. Mitch, help us understand why these open houses are important to our industry.
Fred, these events are important because they give us the opportunity to connect and engage with consumers and allow them the opportunity to see dairy up close. The biggest way that we as an industry can be advocates and help the consumer understand, number one, allow them access to our farm, allow them to come in and see what we're doing. But number two, make sure we're sharing our information out on social media channels, sharing recipes, pictures, showing the everyday lifestyle of a dairy farm. Less than 2% of the people have a direct connection to a farm. So the more that we open up and show them, the more that they understand what we're doing. As Jen mentioned, dairy is a great place to raise a family. But sometimes as dairy farmers and dairy owners, we take for granted the experiences that we get to have out in those barns and working with those dairy cattle. So when we can give similar experiences to those consumers and they can see up close how much we care for our animals and how well they are taken care of, it gives them some satisfaction in knowing that they're purchasing a product that's produced in a very sustainable way. And those animals are extremely happy and comfortable while they do it.
Social media is a great way to promote the industry. What else can we do, not just in June Dairy Month, but all year long?
Same thing. I think throughout the year, as we look throughout our industry here in the state, we have opportunities to reach out to your local school or somewhere in your local community. If there's a festival going on, setting up a booth, showing the consumers and talking to them about your farm and telling them what you do on a daily basis really helps to build that trust. And then once again, that social media piece is so huge because nowadays that's how a lot of our consumers are seeing the industry, are getting their information. So throughout the entire year, it could be as complicated as coming up with a big post that explains the health benefits of dairy, or as simple as just taking a picture of a calf out on the farm. So anything we can do to show what we're doing on a daily basis and show those consumers that we're doing the best that we can to take care of those animals, ensure that they're healthy, safe, and happy. That's what we need to do as the dairy industry.
You brought up some good points, Mitch, and I follow some of our Iowa dairy producers on social media, and it's just amazing, the stories that they share about their operations and kind of the outreach that they get and the questions that those producers get on their social media pages. And, those people are just curious about what happens on a dairy farm. And, and talking to some of those producers that have some of those social media platforms, their biggest satisfaction is changing those consumers' minds and making it a positive experience for them. I think that's the greatest thing that they get out of that is we're changing those consumers' minds by having that experience and being able to show what they do on a day-to-day basis. But certainly our dairy industry has faced some very hard challenges over the last few years. And so I kind of want to bring it back to the producer level and talk about how your organizations are working with your producers or our Iowa dairy producers to help those producers, help promote the dairy industry. Can you share what your organizations are focused on to help those dairy producers?
Yeah, so I'll start with the ISDA side of things. Obviously, we look at laws and regulations that are being created coming through and out of the pandemic, and we are trying to make sure that our dairy voice is heard. Here in Iowa, we want to make sure that as they create different laws and different regulations come into place, we want to make sure those are friendly towards our dairy industry and they actually have a benefit and they don't hinder our ability to produce the wholesome milk that we produce every day. So that's our main focus on ISDA is just ensuring our farmers' freedom to operate and make sure that we're progressively working towards a better Iowa dairy industry. From a Midwest dairy standpoint, some of the big bucket areas would include working with retail partners to help increase dairy sales. We do this by showing dairy trends, making sure they understand how they could maybe stock shelves different to increase their sales, or putting up banner ads, or just running a new promotion. So we do that with our retail partners to help them increase their sales. But we're also working within schools to partner to increase dairy consumption K through 12. We know that's our next generation of consumers. So if we can help them understand the benefit of including dairy in their diet, whether that be with a meal or after they finish a baseball game using chocolate milk as a recovery drink, we want to make sure that that next generation of dairy consumers has a great experience with dairy and they continue to incorporate dairy as they get older. The other area is increasing trust in dairy by working with and through influential partners and leaders. So we are constantly trying to look for where are trends going, whether that be on social media or some other avenue of way of advertising to the consumer. So some of we've worked with influencers, whether that be a dietitian or even a video gamer. So we've looked at different ways of helping to promote to the next generation and building trust, because peer-to-peer interaction and explaining that dairy is a good thing, the farmers can do that, and that certainly helps, but also having that next level, the influencer saying the same messaging and having that same advocacy is truly important for us when it comes to sharing dairy's message.
Yeah, so the Darien Agriculture Foundation hosts several producer events every year, which include things like AI trainings, Midwest Dairy and Beef Day, and producer workshops and trainings. But recently, we have committed to actually dialing in on carbon emissions generated on our farm with the goal of becoming net zero. So this proactive approach here follows the United States dairy industry's goal of becoming carbon neutral or better by the year 2050, while optimizing water use and improving water quality. So that is known as the Net Zero Initiative. In doing so, this spring, we actually held 2 strategic planning sessions, which were attended by local farmers and industry stakeholders. And as a group, we actually set a collective goal to demonstrate strategies for area farms to reference when implementing practices to achieve the goal of becoming net zero, which includes demonstration in renewable energy, feed production, cow care, manure and nutrient use, and water efficiencies and quality. So we know that sustainability is a super hot topic right now, and we know that it's not just going to be an effort that a few of us can take on. We know that we all have a role to play. So we're really excited at the foundation to not only get going on this, but to learn, because there's a lot to learn about all of these efforts and becoming net zero, but we're also excited to grow and support other farms in this endeavor as well.
You know, as scientists and researchers, Jen, you and I recognize real quick that our industry isn't stagnant. As new protocols and best management practices come along, we see dramatic changes. Up here in Northwest Iowa, we've got 3 dairies that are building digesters so that they can put renewable natural gas into the pipeline and cut down on the amount of water that they are using and still have quality fertilizer to put back on the fields to recycle. You know, that's a mechanical side. We have to understand, and I think our dairy team has started the effort to make sure that we're all people who have some stress right now. So we've seen a program like our Ag Couples Getaway, where we brought couples together and had a chance to talk about what's stressing them, what goals are they setting, how are they looking to transfer to the next generation. So I think all of these things are part of the reasons Iowa dairy industry is a vibrant, progressive industry.
Yeah, I think all 3 of you brought up some really great points of how we're helping the dairy producers. And, ultimately, we all have the same goal. We want to have a safe food supply. We want to make sure our cows are healthy, but we also want to make sure our people that are working on those dairies are healthy as well. So we all have our own resources, websites, and social media too. So as we're concluding here, we could all share where we can get some of those resources from each of you in case people want to reach out and look further into your information. So Mitch, where might we find some of your resources?
So from an Iowa State Dairy Association point of view, you can visit iowadairy.org. That's a great resource, and you can go in and find some of our latest newsletters, some of the things that are going on, so and contact to different parts of the dairy sector. So that's a great place for our dairy farmers to visit if they're looking into more of the political aspects of the dairy industry. As we're looking more towards, promotion towards the consumer, I would advise, our listeners to visit one of these 3 websites, midwestdairy.com, usdairy.com, or discoverdairy.com. All 3 of these websites have a variety of different educational pieces and informative pieces for our farmers to share or consumers to come and engage and learn more about the dairy industry. And as always, you can reach out through the Midwest Dairy website and request one of us farmer relations members to give you a call, or someone from our staff to explain more about the dairy industry, and we're always happy to do that.
I encourage everybody to visit iowadairycenter.com to learn more about the Northeast Iowa Dairy and Agriculture Foundation. So we actually just finished up with totally refreshing our website. So all of the content has been refreshed, is new, and it actually shows our new logo. So if you haven't seen our new logo, I encourage you, like I said, to visit iowadairycenter.com so you can learn more about the farm, not only the dairy farm, but the beef and the conservation projects we're doing as well. We do quite a few, besides breakfast on the farm, consumer outreach. And then we have some more information about producer workshops and events and things for youth and students. So I encourage you to check that out. On social media, we are active on Facebook as the Northeast Iowa Dairy and Agriculture Foundation, and then on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Iowa Dairy Center. So check us out online and give us a follow, share our content. We appreciate anybody's help in getting the word out about our efforts here at the Dairy and Agriculture Foundation.
Well, Jen, I know you're going to talk about our dairy team website, but I'll put a shout out for our I-29 Moo University website. Just Google I-29 Moo University. We focus on the dairies along the I-29 corridor, obviously. Our extension teams from those 4 states are very much active in talking to producers and getting information out to them. Also, our 4-state dairy conference website, obviously the other side of the state, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, talking to producers and industry people about improvements and research on nutrition for dairy cows.
All great resources. And Fred, I'll add the Extension Dairy Team website. So if you go to www.iastate.edu/extension/dairy team, or just Google ISU Extension Dairy Team, you'll find our website, and that has, our events that we'll have going on, whether that's webinars, field days, resources for fact sheets. We also have some bilingual materials on there for employees. We also have a YouTube channel. So anytime we host a webinar now, we're archiving them on our YouTube channel so they can be viewed later, as we're finding, sometimes people can't always attend live to those webinars. So it's great to have that resource to go back and watch those again. And of course, this podcast, we try to do these at least 2 times a month, provide a topic. So, if you haven't already subscribed, you can subscribe and get this downloaded on your phone. So if you're out and about traveling, I find a lot of our dairy nutritionists or vets will listen to this, as they're traveling from farm to farm. So just another avenue to get information out to our producers and our consumers. So of course, we can't leave our podcast today, being at June Dairy Month, without talking about everybody's favorite dairy products. So maybe share your favorite dairy product.
Well, Jen, I can kick it off. One of my favorite dairy products is ice cream, and it's hard for me to pick exactly which flavor, but I do love a very rich chocolate ice cream. And I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I didn't remind people to consume that, not only during National Dairy Month, but if you stop down at the State Fair, stop at our 2 ice cream booths and enjoy some of the high quality ice cream we have down there too. So even though it's June, you can enjoy ice cream now and in the future.
Ooh, this is hard to choose what my favorite dairy product would be. I love cheese curds for sure, but given all the heat we've been having lately, especially this early in June, you can't go wrong with ice cream. Ice cream has recently been my favorite go-to dairy product right now.
Jen, my favorite thing in the summer is to be outside and just barbecue some hamburgers and hot dogs and enjoy them with a big, tall, icy, cold glass of white milk.
All good choices and tough decision. Ice cream is always at the top of my list, but I would also say cheese, because it always seems like somebody always brings a new flavor of cheese that I have to try. So definitely on the top of my list. I want to thank Mitch, Mariah, and Fred. Thank you all for being on the podcast and sharing your information and your passion for the dairy industry and the producers that you work for in the state of Iowa. I just want to thank you again for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jen.
And I hope everybody has a good rest of their June Dairy Month. Thanks for joining us today, and look forward to visiting with you on the next Dairy News and Views from ISU.
This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or combination inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/diversity/ext.